The first time we'd heard about the small two-person dev team Vitruvius VR was early on in the PSVR1 lifespan, when they released a third-person platformer called Mervils, a VR adventure. It looked a little basic, but for a smaller budget game, it packed a ton of variety, hours of gameplay, and it was a nice throwback for those of us who grew up in the PS1 and N64 era. And just a few years later, Vitruvius followed that up with Shadow Legend, which was such a massive step up from Mervils that it was kind of unbelievable. And this got us asking if their next game would be yet another exponential leap forward. Well, this week we got our answer with Arken Age, Vitruvius' third VR game, and one of the best games yet on PSVR2.
Who goes there?
Arken Age kicks off as we're being introduced to this world by the custodian, who sets you off on your mission to, you know what guys, I'm not going to lie to you, there's a story here and it's delivered through some brief interactions with NPCs and by discovering audio logs scattered around the world, but I almost never had any idea what was going on. I'm also not a fantasy guy, so trying to absorb all the character names and species was a little overwhelming, and almost none of it started sinking in until my second playthrough. You'd think this would be frustrating or confusing, but somehow it's not an issue. It's a cool blend of fantasy and sci-fi, and just feels like a world you want to be in and experience, even if you're not 100% sure why you're there. And speaking of the world, I mean, look at this place. It's absolutely beautiful. The draw distance, textures, and frame rates are all solid, with lots of nice details in the environment, like leaves falling from trees and reflective water, with only some minor shimmer when you look out into the distance. There's even some cool details on your in-game body. You're given the option of playing in 90 native or 120 reprojected on both the original PS5 and the Pro, and playing on the Pro ups the resolution on both modes even more. It all looks good, and I'm mostly stuck with the super fluid 90 frames native mode, and when switching over to the Pro, the improved clarity was surprisingly noticeable, making it a little harder to go back to the OG PS5 than I'd like to admit. But as with most Pro enhancements, if you don't know what you're missing, you will be very, very happy with how good things look on the original PlayStation 5. And the accompanying orchestral soundtrack here is, I don't know man, just very chill I guess. Really sets the tone for all the exploring you'll be doing. And if you played Shadow Legend, you'll have a pretty good idea of what the gameplay loop is like here. The game's divided up into these big open areas, so you enter each one, clear out all the enemies, then it becomes a massive collectathon scavenger hunt to track down all the collectibles in the area. And that's kind of it. But Arken Age takes it to another level by making the combat something special. As you progress through the game, you'll find a ton of weapon mods that drastically change how each weapon fires and controls. Even the sword hilt can be modified into a handful of other melee weapons, like a cleaver or a God of War throwable axe. But since the mods are a major part of the fun here, I'm going to do my best not to show too many variations, so there'll be a few surprises left for you when you get in there. The weapons all feel great to fire, feature strong haptics and adaptive trigger support. Attacking with melee weapons lets you destroy your enemy's armor, chop off arms and legs, decapitate them, letting you take those body parts with you to scrap for money later. And there was obviously a lot of love put into this combat system. Enemies will scale walls or jump down from high ledges to come after you. They'll swap weapons as you get closer, and it seems like whatever you try just works. You can catch grenades and throw them back at your enemies, parry in whatever way feels natural, block bullet fire with weapons, reflect sniper shots back at the sniper with your shield, climb trees and use them for cover. I don't know if it's the best combat I've experienced in VR. I think it might be, but it's definitely the most fun. One of my favorite things to do in any game is explore, and I don't think there's been a game since Shadow Legend that made exploring this rewarding. Because you're able to activate your climbing picks with just a quick flick of the wrists, it's clear that it's going to be something you're doing a lot of in Arken Age. But unlike something like Horizon Call of the Mountain, it's not obtrusive here. Instead, it offers a fast, fun way to get from place to place, so if you're like me, you'll tend to walk into new areas and just look up, seeing if there are crates or collectibles on high ledges, then proceed to figure out what you're going to climb in order to get there. And there really is stuff everywhere. You'll climb trees to break crystals, there's money, weapon mods, these guys hanging around which function as kind of a morality system, and of course the biggest collectibles are these relics, and getting enough of them unlocks some pretty cool items. And when you're done exploring, you can jump down from the highest place in the map and land with a nice satisfying rumble in the headset, or by jumping into the water and seeing what's hiding beneath the surface. If you've been watching the channel for a while, then you've probably heard us use the term VRAF to describe immersive interactions in games. Well, that term originated all the way back in February of 2020, when my co-host Jeremy King described Vitruvius' last game, Shadow Legend, as VR as f***, and Arken Age continues the tradition of Vitruvius games being VRAF in all the best ways. You craft health syringes by dismantling the fruit you've collected, customize the colors of your weapons, perform manual reloads, climb, synthesize weapon mods, hold up severed heads to unlock doors, and all sorts of other cool little things that make you feel like you're part of this world.
Access granted.
My first playthrough took around 11 hours, with my profile touting an 81% completion rate, which means that although I took my time and explored, there were still more challenges to complete, totems to hunt down, and weapon mods to discover. Fortunately, when you kill the final boss, which is epic by the way, you're able to go back into the world and round up everything you missed. Or even better, you can start again in New Game Plus, choose a harder difficulty, and head back in and do it all over again with less health, less money, and more challenging enemies. But while Arken Age does seem to deliver everything I want, I do have a couple of complaints, but they're minor. Sections of the world are divided up by these tight little corridors, which I thought were designed to hide loading screens, but each of them actually contains a loading screen, and clocking in at around 2 seconds, they might be the shortest loading screens I've ever seen. But the fact that they're still there keep each area from feeling totally connected to the last. And I know, Behemoth had these, Arizona Sunshine has these. It'll just be great when we can eliminate these all together and make the worlds feel truly cohesive. It's also a little easy to get lost. The game frequently gives you instructions on what to do or where to go, and my response just as frequently was, and where was that again? Luckily, every teleporter has a map screen with some objectives on it, but you're carrying around this big tablet with you at all times, and it would be awesome if the map and objectives were a part of that. And finally, I know a lot of you have been asking if the whole world is as green as the trailer show. And yeah, this green biome you're seeing is a majority of the game. Eventually you do get to one that looks a little bit different, and there are plenty of interior locations to scout. But an icy mountain or an underground molten lava area could have really mixed things up considerably. Again, I know these are minor complaints, and a lot of other recent VR games have suffered from similar issues, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be brought up. Somehow a small little team from Canada made one of the most polished, coolest adventures VR has ever seen. They nailed the climbing, combat, visual, soundtrack, and exploration in ways teams more than 10 times their size haven't been able to do nearly as well. Sure, I wish there was more of everything. More biomes, more bosses, hell, even more abilities and weapon mods. Which means Arken Age 2 is suddenly my most wanted game on the platform. But, you know, make sure you play Arken Age 1 in the meantime.